Hey there, it's Julie Hutchison here from Think, Be, Do Leadership, and hello on this rainy Thursday afternoon. We are talking today about how mushroom management can kill the business that you are in, and if it's your business, how you're going to kill your business. Because it's all about team performance, isn't it? It's not just about you; it's about how your team are performing. So if you're the leader in your business or in a business, the biggest thing that you can do is have your team on board, doing what they should be doing, happy doing what they should be doing, and getting on with it. Sounds good, yeah, sounds simple. Tell them what to do, get on with it. But I see so many people making this mistake of um, mushroom management because we forget that people can't read our minds. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome. If you're listening live, then give us a shout, say hello. And if you're listening on replay, then put hashtag replay. It's me and the dog Meg asleep, hopefully, for the whole of this rather than coughing. She's my little sidekick here. And we're going to talk about what do you do if you think maybe you are mushroom managing or if you've got a mushroom manager. So the reason why I call it mushroom management is because you're fed on and kept in the dark. Okay, so it used to happen to me a lot when I was in policing, where we were told, it's a need to know basis. You don't need to know that, and we didn't get told stuff. And what that means is when you're not told why you're doing something, and maybe your boss says, or you say, because I said so. You know that one when you were a kid, if you were ever a kid, or if you've got kids, then, when somebody says, well, why do I need to do that? It's like, well, because I said so. That is a symptom of mushroom management. And what I mean by this is that we don't always think that we need to tell people things because we know them, they're up in our heads, and we think, well, they know how to do their thing, they're skilled at doing their thing. So I don't need to go around telling them all of the details of the whys and the wherefores of everything. And it's frustrating sometimes to have to tell people the whys and the wherefores of everything. You know what I mean? Okay. However, if you don't do that, then that means that people are there kept in the dark. And what happens when they're kept in the dark? Well, what we know is that people make up their own reality if they don't know the truth. So when people make up their own reality, they see things differently from you, which means that they're going to run their own agenda. So even when you've got really good people who are committed to you, committed to the business, and they like you, and they know how to do things, what will happen is they fill in the blank. So they fill in the blank of, well, what should I do? How can I make good decisions in the business? And a couple of things happen. Well, first of all, if we are kept in the dark, we won't know the answers and we can't make the decisions. So we have to ask you. We have to go to the boss and say, what's next, boss? What do I do now? How do I do this? Because we cannot make a decision because we can't see the reason why. So then if we either go and ask, or we sit there and we think, well, I reckon it's this. So we make up our own reality and we then choose our own agenda because we think, well, if in the absence of anybody telling me what we're doing and where we're going, I'm just going to go my own route and it's going to be the one that makes most sense to me, or I think they might want, or even the one I like doing the most, which are not necessarily going to be the routes that you want them to take, if you can imagine. Yeah. So it becomes about them because there's nowhere else to link to. There's nothing they can grab hold of. But what also happens is that they're frustrated too, because most people we know come to work because they want to do a good job. So here they are, skilled, educated, fabulous at what they do, but they don't know where they're going. It's like, I don't know what cake you want. I can't make the cake because I don't know what you want it to look like. So they can't become involved. They can't commit themselves to anything. And therefore they're kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't really feel enthused by anything. And we know that it's not just about I can't do something. It's can't do, won't do, don't do. It's about I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get involved as much as I might have the skill. So when you don't keep people in the loop about where you're going and why you're going there, and we say, well, you don't need to know why, then what that means is you have less committed people, you have people who can't make decisions, and you have people who then lose enthusiasm for the job as a whole, which means you have to do more telling people what to do, like minuscule. You have to do more micromanagement, and you have to work a whole lot harder, because they're not going to put the extra effort in, because they don't know where to put the effort. They're just like running around in circles waiting for your next guidance. There's no long-term view. So if you keep people in the dark, they're not going to care. They're going to start to run their own agenda. So what that means is they're going to fall out of love with your business, and they'll probably leave. Or if they don't leave, they'll just be doing it for the money and waiting to retire, which is what happens a lot in the police. However, so what do you need to do instead? Well, we need to, one, not be the mushroom manager. Two, not say, well, you don't need to know, and actually think about how can we share and communicate where we're going, why we're going there, and also why should they care? That's the really big point, is why should they care? And I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about what I call the trip, sat nav, and I'll explain that a bit. And I want to talk about three things, which is relevance, validity, and interesting. Okay, let's talk about the trip first. So the trip is something that I use in our training programs with all sorts of leaders, but particularly we're talking about here is about technical leaders. But what I'm talking about, the trip, is four things: T, R, I, and P, because we're going on a journey. And we want to take people with us on the journey. We don't just want them to be there as minions on the side. We want to take them with us, so that they want to come, they want to be part of the journey. So what does it stand for? Well, T. If you don't have T, then they don't know where they're going. So let's talk about chocolate cakes. I don't know what the rest of what the cake's going to look like. Okay, so if we don't know what the T is, and that's target, then we don't know what the vision for the business. We don't know what it is we're trying to do, and we also don't know why we're going there. Okay, so if we don't have that in the first place, you can't make the cake to do that. You can't be part of making it, because you're like, well, I don't know what it is. The R is it just as important, and that, if you don't have it, it's going to cause people to run their own agenda in like the way in which they make the cake. For example, I don't know, let's think about it. We've gone on cakes. Well, they might want to say, well, I want to make a vegan cake, and you want to make one with eggs in. They're going to change the way in which you do things. Okay, and so what R is about the route that you take. And if you don't get clarity on this for yourself, and you don't communicate that clarity, then nobody's going to be able to follow, okay? Because they don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're making, and they don't know which way you want to make it, and they don't know how to get involved. Now, the I and the P, we're not going to go into detail today, but I'll tell you what they mean. And that is, the I is inspire. Because, as I said to you, if you don't tell anybody what it is, then how can they be inspired by what you're saying? So if you've got it, I know in my head that this is what we're doing, and this is the route we're going to be taking, but I can't be involved if you haven't told me what that is, and you haven't inspired me to do that. So that third piece often gets missed out. So we do a bit of tr, but we don't do any it. And then the fourth piece is the final piece that gets missed out massively on occasion, and that is pledge. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody said to you, like, do what I say, not what I do? That's normally your parents, isn't it? But what this in leadership, what this is about, is you telling people that this is what you want, this is how you want them to behave, this is how you want them to work, but they're not seeing it from you. So they don't see you believe in the same thing. So you're not following this trip. Okay. So pledge is about your ability to step up and walk the talk. Because when you walk the talk, then people will see that you're committed to it, and they will commit too, because people won't be committed unless you are. Okay, so TRIP. Now, what I want to talk about today, because that's something that we work on in our Leaders Launchpad and our Impact Accelerator programs. But today we're just going to talk about three things, and that is, if I'm saying that I need this, this is where we're going, this is what my chocolate cake looks like, this is the recipe for it. How do I get people to buy into that? Okay, so we've said what happens if you don't even know about it, but how do I get them to buy into it? Because yes, I need to tell them, but they need to want to actually take that on board, don't they? Because they might not agree with it, or they might think, does it make sense to me? Or what the hell is Julie talking about? Or it's just so bland and boring that they aren't inspired by it. They don't want to get on board with you. So if they might know it, but they don't agree with it or feel inspired by it, they're still not going to follow you. So We have to tell them the why, but we have to tell them in a way that means something to them. Okay. And we're going to talk about these three things, and that is the validity of what you're saying, the relevance to them of what you're saying, and the interest factor of what they're saying. So let's just talk about that. So, valid, what do I mean? What I mean is that they need to trust that it makes sense. It actually adds up. How do you do that? Well, we work on this a lot in the Impact Accelerator, but today we're just going to say that, think about it. I have to explain my why and my vision in a way that actually makes sense to those people. Okay, so if I want them to agree with it, we haven't even got to agree, but let's just say I want them to agree, but they've got to know about it, and they've got to know about it in a way that actually means something to them. Because if you don't, then they're going to be confused by it, or they're going to be like not sure what you mean, and they're like, or it's a bit wishy-washy. Then still, they're not going to buy into it, which still means that they're not sure, they can't make good decisions in the business. And in order to have a good team that performs, where you're not doing all the work, then you need them to be able to make good decisions in the business, because then they get on with it. Yeah. So first of all, they have to understand that what you're telling them, the trust that what you're telling them makes sense. Okay. So we have to articulate it in a way that makes sense to them. And that's easier said than done, but we don't have time because we're 11 minutes in and we haven't got all day. So if you want to know more about how to talk at the level where people will find what you're saying is valid and actually understand it at the level that they can digest it, then give me a shout and we'll talk about how we can help you to do that. The next piece is relevant. What do I mean by that? Well, if it's not relevant, and you know yourself, your brain's got loads of stuff coming in here, and there's lots of things to think about every day. So your brain goes, interesting, yeah, relevant, right? Is it relevant to me? No, it's not relevant. And they're going to chuck it out again. So you need something that's for their brain to say, that's relevant, it's of use to me, I'm going to listen to this. Okay. And the problem for a lot of people is they don't link this relevance to the person in terms of what they want for themselves. So if I say to you, or we're going to be, I can't think of it now, going on a cruise to the Norwegian fjords, that's where I've just been, and they're like, okay, and they say, but you're not coming, and it's all about me, then it's not relevant to them. It's a bit of a poor example, but just imagine they're not going to buy into it, so they're not going to help you unless there's some other relevance to it. There's some other reason why this is important to them. Okay, so if you don't have this, then they're still not going to be bought into what you want to do or what you're telling them that they should be doing. The last one then is interesting, because it can be relevant, but it can be a bit dull, or it can be a bit like it doesn't really make me no zhuzh, there's no zing, there's no woof about it. And what we're trying to say here is like, what's in it for me? What's the purpose of all of this? What's interesting about it? And when you do this, then you're adding in this relevance and interesting to the validity. It means that they get excited and they can commit to what you want to do. So because they understand it, they're like, okay, that makes sense to me. I'm going to get something out of it. And you know what? I agree, or I'm passionate about it. And that's where it becomes interesting. It's like, oh, actually, that's my cause. And this is all about linking what you're doing to the cause. They agree with your cause, okay? And they're inspired by what you're saying. Think about it. If all these things we've got to do, and you haven't even told them about it, then you can't be inspiring and you can't be relevant or interesting. So of course they're not going to be bought into what you want them to do. So you're not going to get a great output from that because you haven't even spoke about it. So when you do speak about it, relevant, interesting, valid, and make sure that you inspire them to follow. Does that make sense? Good. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about today, because I want you to think about that, is how well do I articulate the vision, the strategy, and where they fit into that, so that they can come on that trip with us, they can buy into it, they know how relevant it is to them, they understand what's in it for them, and they agree with the cause that you're working towards, which means that you will have a more committed team of people who want to help you and are able to make good decisions in business because they can see where you're going and they want to go with you. So if that's been helpful, but you're thinking, oh my goodness, how do I actually implement that? Then give me a shout, because that's what we do on our Impact Accelerator and on our Leaders Launchpad. So please give me a shout and I can tell you all about that too. Okay, have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions, just message me and I'll get back to you. Take care.